right. Yes, welcome everyone. Once again, my name is Favor. I'm going to quickly run a poll now to get us started and just get us all jiggy and getting ready to go into the session proper. Once the poll is done, I'll introduce our facilitator for today, and from there, he will take over and delve straight into the session. So yes, here is the poll. So do you work with a fintech company? The question is, do you work with a fintech company? Yes, I work with a fintech company. I own or manage a fintech company. You worked rather, then you own or manage. Now I'm working with a fintech company. You want to work with a fintech company, or you're just passing through this masterclass. Let's know what it is. Let's know what it is. Yes, the poll is still live. I'm going to close it exactly when it's in. I'm seeing some interesting data. Good. Oh, interesting. So, okay, let's just wait. So it's 15 seconds down to the poll. 15 seconds to go. 15 seconds to go. Three, two, one, and the poll. Yes. So you can see the results. We have a lot of people who want to work in fintech companies or with a fintech product. Interesting. And we have a few people who also own or manage a fintech, who are working in fintech company and who have worked with fintech company. That's interesting. So for the people who are like, they want to work in a fintech company, what fintech company would you like to work in? Share with us in a bit. Just share with us in the chat box while I introduce our facilitator for today. And our facilitator today is he's a fintech expert, he's a senior product manager, someone I really deeply respect. Is another person called Nifemi Oluboyede, and Nifemi is someone you will usually find at the intersection between payments and its delivery through technology. He's passionate about leveraging his knowledge of digital payment solutions in building products that are both cutting edge and very user friendly. His experience cuts across roles within Zenith Bank, System Specs, or you could call it Remita, popular name for Remita, Team Hapt, Carbon, and Fair Money, and Woodcore. That's a lot of experience. And from the world of his experience, he is going to be coming to share with us today. Some of you might also know him as the Fintech Bro on Twitter. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage now, Nifemi Oluboyede. Yeah, you can jam your hands right now, guys. You can jam your virtual hands. Hey, welcome, Nifemi.
Hi guys. Good evening, everybody. So the way you were doing that intro, it was almost feeling like church. When guest minister is coming, like all the way from Virginia Island, all that. But yeah, but like I said, right? Okay.
Okay. Nifemi, let's pause the video, your video share, and let's just do with the audio for now.
We can hear you well.
Hello. Okay. Sorry, everyone. We briefly lost Nifemi on the call, so I believe he's going to join back shortly. But while he's joining back shortly, let me quickly go back to a few people sharing the companies they would like to work in. I see people sharing Paystack, Flutterwave, or Carbon. Then I see another Paystack. I see Stripe. I see Flutterwave. Yeah, interesting ones. I like it. I like it. The one that really gets to me is I see there's a lot of Paystack. So will someone just briefly like to tell us why they would like to work at Paystack? I once heard from somebody who was working at Flutterwave, and they're like, I got my job, I just got a job at FLW. I'm like, what's in the FLW? Like, Flutterwave, oh, cool. So I'm like, I'm a unicorn babe now, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, unicorn babe, nice. So that could be an awesome reason to work there. But Paystack, Paystack is on his way to also being, a unicorn. So, but I would like to know an interesting reason why you like to work at Paystack. Anyone like to share? Okay, Nifemi, you back.
Yes, I'm back. Oh, SpectraNet wanted to be opportunity.
Let's run it without the video for a while and see if it's will be stable. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, all right, no problem then. So I will. The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, everybody again, and apologies for the network thing. It was due to circumstances beyond our control, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. Where is my screen? All right, please, you guys let me know the moment you see my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Hello? Yes, I can see your screen.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome. Cool. All right. My name is Nifemi. Like Favor said, I'm here to deceive you guys a little bit. Make you guys believe that I know what I'm saying. And yes, disclaimer, right? It would sound like I know what I'm saying a lot of time, but it's not every time that I know what I'm saying. But that's our job, right? To make people believe in our product, to make people believe in our user stories and all that. So over the next hour and a half or so, we'll be looking at the items that I put up there. First off, the Nigerian Fintech landscape, then knowing some of the regulators in the space, identifying some key areas where you can play, and then we go into the product stuff, some of the capabilities that I think are core for a product manager, especially in the fintech space, characteristics of a product manager, a little bit about the lean product lifecycle, and then we'll talk about scaling. And I'm sharing a few hacks that I found, especially over the last few years in this space. In terms of methodology, the plan is I go over stuff and you have questions, please feel free to stop me in my tracks by raising up your hand. If you have a question, maybe something I gloss over and you want some detail, hopefully I know enough to be able to provide detail. Otherwise, at the end of everything, we would have, the plan is that we have sufficient time to just ask questions for guys who, because I saw from the poll that a lot of people want to enter the space. Some people are in the space looking to transition from, non-product roles into product roles and stuff. So the plan is, we have enough time to take questions. Feel free to put me on the hot seat. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. If I know, I'll tell you what I know about it. So yeah, that's it. Does that sound like a plan, everybody? If it does, just, wave or give me thumbs up so that I know that you guys are with me. Okay, I've seen thumbs up. Awesome, awesome. And at any point, please, if you guys can't hear me, also either in the chat section, just tell me, Oga, we cannot hear you, or you can just type Sorosuke, and I would oblige. Okay, without further ado, let's move. So first off, what you're looking at is an interesting collage put together by a friend. And it's supposed to summarize a lot of the fintech companies that are in the industry. This is as of the end of 2020. So if you don't mind, you can just take a minute to sort of look at this and try to spot your favorites. If there's any fintech company or, company in the space that you don't find there, feel free to put in the chat box and say, what are these guys, right? And if you look at the far right, my first comment there is that he joke. Like, this is not even everybody, but this is a lot. So yeah, has anybody seen any company that should be there that is not there? Feel free to mention their name in the chat. One Pipe, correct guy. Yeah, I noticed One Pipe wasn't there as well. Oh, One Pipe is there. Nice. Because I've seen it. I've seen One Pipe. Okay. Anybody? Sure, we should do giveaway. Anybody that spots a major fintech company that is not on this list. Eversend. Eversend is not a Nigerian company. They are importers. Woodcore, correct guy. You sabi. Yeah, Woodcore, we are not here. Me, I'm fighting the person that did it, sha. Credit equity, nice. I actually think credit equity should invest a lot in more publicity because they do a lot of amazing stuff that people are not aware of. Migo. Okay. Nice. Express payments. Express payment. I just do fintech. No offense. Those guys are amazing people. They have almost all the licenses you can think of. Oh, there's express payments. Check where you have PTSP and MPOS at the Regos. Jalion. Funke, do you mind sharing what Jalion is about? Never heard of them. Just the one. Oh, Mono, yeah. Mono and Okra are not here actually. Or are they? I don't see Mono. I don't see Okra either. So yeah, thanks for that. All right, interesting stuff. This for me was just to sort of, Global Accelerex is here, Femi. So this was just for me to sort of, get your engagement and be sure that, we're in the right class. And if you sort of take the time out to look at this image, you find that there is some sort of segmentation between across different types. So savings and investments, consumer payments, crowdfunding, agri-tech, lending marketplace. So you would find that some of your faves may not be in the places where you expect them to be, largely because maybe they are playing across multiple verticals, right? And we just had to put them in one place as opposed to repeating them multiple times. People like IntoSwitch is in switching, they're in PTSP, they're in mobile money or agency. They are almost everywhere. A part of IntoSwitch itself does, infrastructure. Oh, okay. Okra is there actually at the far right bottom. Same. All right. So let's dive deep into it. So first things first is know your regulators, right? As boring as it may seem, it is important to know your regulators and stay updated on their guidelines regularly. So for instance, there is a very recent guideline that was released by the central bank 2 weeks ago with regards to payment systems generally. Over the coming slides, you'll see some of the updates that came with that. But in the fintech space, what I've done here is to identify some of the what's it called? Some of the major players in the space. My bad. Okay, yeah. So we all know CBN, right? CBN is the government approved regulator for financial services in the country, financial services of all kinds. There is NDIC. NDIC is full for Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation. They are responsible for ensuring every kobo that is with a deposit-taking institution. And deposit-taking institutions would usually be commercial banks, microfinance banks, all the different types of banks actually, including, so there's a gray area, which is the mobile money operators, right? Because they are allowed to actually take deposits, but it's an interesting question to find out whether or not, your mobile money is insured or not. Although, as I would also talk about, a lot of things in the fintech space are not, it's not always an exact science. So there are a lot of partnerships, a lot of, hand-in-hand workings. So I would expect that the mobile money, if directly they don't have, NDIC backing, would work with a commercial bank that has NDIC backing, so that for every kobo that you have sitting with them, it's properly insured with NDIC. There is NITDA. NITDA is a player that has, become more prominent in the last few years, because NITDA is a National Information Technology Development Agency, and they've been coming in from the angle of regulating the use of data, right, and ensuring that Nigeria as a whole is a data privacy compliant market. So from time to time, as fintech companies, you may be required to acclimatize with some of the regulations or guidelines and be sure that you're on the good side of the law. There's the SEC, which is Security and Exchange Commission. They are the regulator of securities and capital markets. So when you think of the likes of Shaka, the likes of Bamboo, the likes of maybe RiseVest as well, those who are in the capital market side of fintech, they would usually be required to be regulated by SEC. Because that's where you get some level of comfort with putting huge deposits that are supposed to be for investment purpose with those sort of companies. And there is the NCC, right? Until some 2-3 years ago, I really didn't know that, NCC was a thing for fintech companies. The Nigerian Communications Company, they are the ones that actually regulate value-added services for fintechs and even your USSD. So for value-added services, these are things like SMS, or even maybe bill payments as well. So if you have like an aggregator who wants to sort of offer that service, maybe somebody like a quick teller that has gone to integrate with all the telcos to do that or to perform that sort of service, you need to be licensed by NCC as a VAS. There are a bunch of VAS licensed guys out there. There's Vertebra, Mobifin, all those folks. And of course, for every time you need to also extend your fintech service channel across to the USSD side of things, NCC is the guy that issues those 3-digit or 4-digit codes that you have for USSD. So whether you're a financial service provider, whether you're a telco, whatever it is, you get assigned that code by NCC. And yeah, so there are a bunch of other guys who are not captured here who sort of play one or two roles from time to time. There's the Corporate Affairs Commission. Of course, you must register your company. In some cases, there's FIRS. You also have to be tax compliant. I remember some years back when I was in Zenith Bank, and in one of the states in the Southwest, the state's IRS came and said they were auditing their taxes and found out that, the branch had not paid, or they didn't pay the tax completely some 4 or 5 years before that time, and the auditor just picked it up and they were like, pay it now or we won't let you operate. And I remember, about 2 or 3 branches in the state were shut down for like a whole day because of internal revenue issue, which wasn't really their fault. Because if I pay tax and you say I've paid, and you come back tomorrow and tell me, oh, I didn't finish paying, it's not really my fault. But yeah, that's what it is. And the background here is just to remind you guys that at every point in time, some of the regulatory brouhaha that we're seeing these days, as much as yes, it oftentimes comes across as our regulators are stifling innovation and things like that. Some of these things can be avoided from the beginning if you get accustomed with all the possible players that can wake up one morning to make your life difficult. All right. So I've taken the liberty to just do snapshots of some of these. I don't want to call them annoyingly boring, guidelines. You know how government entities can be when they say in the circular or a guideline, you see boring, fully text-heavy documents that are like 30 pages, 50 pages. And, you probably ask yourself the question, well, what exactly has this got to do with me? I think it has a lot to do with you, right? Because part of your job as a PM in the fintech space is having a clear understanding of regulatory requirements and designing your products in a way that from the beginning, you're very clear on what is permissible. Yeah, oftentimes I hear the saying, build first, worry about regulation later. But that's a concept that I'm very wary of when Nigeria is the market, right? Because we've seen firsthand that nobody sends you that you have built something. If they come and say that it's not compliant, you will close your shop. Sure you get. So on the left-hand side, I took a snapshot of the new license categories that we now have for payments in Nigeria. So before now, it used to be extensively longer than this, but they've done some subbing, which you would see further down. Some things are now under some things, let me put it that way. So there is now, switching and processing, mobile money operations. There is now payment solution services. So for payment solution services, for instance, which they're now calling PSS, there are 3 sub-licenses under that. There is, PSSP that we probably know before now, which is Payment Solution Service Provider. There is PTSP, which is Payment Terminal Service Provider, and there is now Super Agents. And of course, recently there is the regulatory sandbox that came in. Right now, it's not really it's not a cost-intensive license to obtain, but if you're playing in that space, it means the central bank is happy to regulate whatever you're doing, where you're saying, you have a sandbox that all the players can come and be testing their products on. You are just a kind-hearted person that you are doing this for the ecosystem. Awesome. But yeah, this snapshot is also for you to have an idea of some of the small one-liners that could put you in trouble when you're designing your fintech product. So if you look at number 2 now, number 2 says only MMOs, mobile money operators, are permitted to hold customer funds. Companies with licenses within any of the other categories are not permitted to hold customer funds. And what is holding customer funds? Having it in your position, essentially. So if you look at people like Paystack, Flutterwave, who help you to collect money throughout the life cycle of that process, they serve as conduits, right? Where they collect through your issuing bank. They have the acquirer processor, which is usually a bank as well, that is responsible for holding that money. And then when it's time to settle you, if you are the merchant, they settle you from that bank straight to your account. Yes, they design fancy dashboards and you can see a position inside that dashboard, but really what it is the money is never with them. It's usually with the bank. Yeah, on the right-hand side, I also picked something quite interesting that somebody asked me about recently, where, we're having a conversation talking about some of the digital banks, knowing fully well that, most of the digital banks you have around are riding on MFB licenses because they're less expensive than commercial banking licenses. But it's interesting to know that part of the non-permissible activities for a microfinance bank, as the guideline for MFBs states, is MFBs shall not engage in the provision of the following financial services: foreign currency transactions, except foreign currency borrowings. So you can raise funds from outside. So again, case in point, say a Kuda bank, we know that, they've raised some capital and all that from investors outside, but that's as much as they can do when foreign currencies involved. International commercial papers, they can't do that. International corporate finance, they can't do that. International electronic funds transfer, they can't do that. So essentially, using Kuda as an example, if there's any Kuda staff here, sorry, it's not like I'm doing free advert or anything, or I'm not attacking you guys, but it's one of the biggest digital banks out there, and I felt like a lot of people can resonate with it. So for instance, Kuda by itself cannot decide that they're collecting money from people in the abroad and depositing it in your account like what the likes of a Western Union or a TransferWise would do, because those guys are licensed IMTOs. IMTO is International Money Transfer Operator, right? As an MFB, Kuda would not be able to engage in that directly. But caveat is that, and this is what I spoke about when I said, partnerships and all those things are very important. The caveat to that is, what a lot of the commercial banks do today, even though technically they're allowed to be able to operate in FX, but on the IMTO side of things, you would find that a lot of banks would subscribe to registered IMTOs as agent outlets. So agent outlets means that you can. Oh, okay. Nice question from Onome, which I would address almost immediately. So by registering as agents with IMTOs, the banks are then able to be exit points where an IMTO has delivered a service to my uncle in the US, and the expectation is that they want to credit my bank here in Nigeria. Because my bank is an agent of that IMTO, it's easy to sort of complete that transaction. So there's a question from Onome, which I'm reading very quickly. How can MMOs hold funds without banks? Before now, mobile money, e-money, fiscal funds are held in trust accounts domiciled with commercial banks. Very, very good question. And because I know Onome personally, is an Egbo OG banker. I like that he's putting me on the spot with this question. It's interesting that CBN has said that, right? And I don't know if Onome was here when I started speaking to the fact that, there's a gray area as to are MMOs now going to be, with NDIC in terms of securing holders' funds. That's a question that I don't have an answer to, right? But I would expect that in the interim, to circumvent any worries, the expectation is that MMOs can partner with banks where the banks are still the holder of the funds, but the funds are held in the MMO's position in the bank, which is what has always happened anyways. So I don't really think much changes in that regard. Another play that I would see here is that a lot of this is happening because of the PSBs that are now around, because the PSBs essentially they are magnified MMOs, if you want to think of them in that light, and they have the ability to hold funds. So yeah, Onome, I hope I answered your question small, but yeah, feel free to hit me up so that we can brush ideas on this. Okay, so very quick overview of where you can play. So this where you can play thing, I sort of broke it down into bank and non-bank. And first off is to, sort of show you guys what it requires to be what. So on the commercial bank side of things, there are three possible licenses. There is the regional bank license, which means you can only operate in a region. So region being Southwest, region being Southeast, region being North Central. You specify that this is the region where you want to operate. You obtain a license. It's the capital base for that license is 10 billion naira. For a national bank, which is what most of the commercial banks have. So example of regional bank would be, I think Heritage is still a regional bank. I don't know if they've upgraded their license. I think Providus started out with one as well. I'm not sure if they've extended. But yeah, so national banks are your everyday FCMB, Fidelity Bank, and what have you. And then there are the international banks. So some of the international banks we have today, besides the likes of Zenith, GT Bank, what the international banks are they're the commercial banks that, even though they're Nigerian banks, they now operate in other countries. So you have the likes of Wema is a regional bank. Thanks for that, Femi. You have the likes of UBA Access, where you have UBA Ghana, you have UBA this, UBA that. Those are international banks. And what that means is, if you are playing in that space, the central bank expects that, there is a significantly higher portion of funds that you're keeping as your capital base, just so that, if anything wrong happens, there won't be stories that touch, because a lot of lives will be affected. So for microfinance bank, there are 3 licenses: unit, state, and national. So more recently, I found out that the unit MFB is also broken down into 2, which is the rural and the urban. So the rural is actually 50 million, while the urban is 200 million. So rural means, as the name implies, you're applying for a unit MFB in a rural area. So the peculiarity of unit MFB is you can only have 1 branch in 1 location. So if you are going for the rural one, which is cheaper, it means you've chosen a local or an obscure location where you want to perform your microfinance banking services. For urban means you are in an urban area, population and all that defines what urban could be. And the capital base is different. So for instance, an MFB in Osun State, maybe Ile-Ife, versus an MFB in Victoria Island would be, that sort of difference. State MFB means you can have multiple branches across, the specified state, while national means you can do and undo anywhere you want to go. Specialized institutions, these are not so common, or we don't talk about them so much. So we have the non-interest banks, which are the more common examples in Nigeria would be your Islamic banks, the likes of Jaiz Bank, and more recently we now have Taj Bank as well. So if you were going for a regional license in that space, it's 5 billion naira. If you were going for a national license, it's 10 billion naira. And there are the big guys that don't shout, which are the merchant banks. Those ones are they're like the Baba Isales. They don't make noise, but they have plenty money. Merchant banks, we have FSDH, we have Coronation Merchant Bank, you have Rand Merchant Bank, there's Nova Merchant Bank as well. So a bunch of these guys, the rules are a bit different. When they take deposits, they don't take deposits for small children. Maybe you, as a customer of a merchant bank, you're making single deposits from like 100 million naira and all that. It's not the bank where you go and drop your 2 million. It's not for us. Like, they won't collect it. So they have like specific rules in terms of the volume that they deal with. And also, I have a question from Verbon. How can licensing restrict banks when offering digital services, as we cannot limit users who get to download their apps? So interesting stuff, right? Verbon. I also think the central bank doesn't have answer to this question just yet, because what you find is a lot of the digital banks out there will just, get any of this. In fact, what's most common is, getting a unit MFB license in one location, and you offer your services digitally. Like, you are in one office, you are in one place. Nobody can come and say that you have multiple branches. But technically, because you're offering you're playing in the digital space that is not, for lack of a better word, that has not been properly regulated, there's no clear answer to that. So it's easy to just, for now, circumvent. Okay, I like these questions coming up. What's the clear-cut difference in terms of responsibility and operations between commercial bank and merchant bank? I think I touched on that a bit. Commercial bank is anybody's bank, it's for everybody. You can go there. But for merchant banks, it's specifically for businesses. And like I said, there are value thresholds in terms of the type of business. It's high volume business, right? That's the requirement for their customers, and for the bank itself, those are the expectations from the central bank. But one of the things that I would say is a lot of these guidelines or policies, it doesn't reside in one person's head, right? So there's a CBN part of the CBN, there's a part of the CBN website where you can just go and have a field day and play around with, some of these guidelines where you see what is admissible. So if you remember my first slide, it was, those things are boring, but reading these things, knowing them, and keeping a mental picture of these things help you to be more grounded, right? So for instance, I have a huge folder that is just CBN regulations, and from time to time I update it. I just play around and read stuff. All right, let's move on. Others, so we have finance company licenses, costs 100 million. So for finance company, most times these are people that raise funds from the general public, and more often than not, you find them operating in the lending space. So I know that Carbon, before they got their MFB license towards the end of last year, were operating with a finance company license to lend. I know there is Zvance, they use a finance company. I know Page also uses a finance company license. And the interesting thing is, as much as they can take deposits, right, they also have a 50,000 naira limit. So if you're a finance company and you are taking money from people to lend out, you cannot take less than 50,000 naira in one deposit. Anything less than that, you are in clear violation of your CBN guidelines. All right. So on the PM side of things, right, if you were going to be launching a digital bank, I took the liberty. Chibuzo, I'll come back to your question. I'm trying to optimize a little bit and then come back to the questions. So I just put in like what possibly a template you want to try out, where, as the PM, we are launching a digital bank. What are the things you need to be looking out for? Clearly state out your vision, your goal. Oh, thanks, Chibuzo. I didn't read through. I just saw something. Okay. List out your goal. Also have maybe like a tagline. It's good for marketing or creating buzz out there. For instance, a certain bank, they are the bank of the free. I didn't call any names. So my own tagline here is, you already worry about Nigeria, don't worry about your money. You define your target groups. Who are you targeting? Because it's a digital bank, of course, you're targeting the digital natives, maybe 9-to-5ers, because they have jobs, and those are the people that will constantly put in deposits and maybe from time to time need some loans or savings. You have your Twitter warriors, so that it's easy for you to do online campaigns. Instagram shoppers. Again, these are just hypothetical examples, but the more important thing is, identifying all these things. What are the needs that you're trying to solve for? People need access to credit. They want that banking service that gives extra. People want a one-stop shop. I don't want to have one app for bills, another app for investments, another app for transfer. If you're able to bring all that into one app, awesome. So what products are you going to be offering? Bank accounts, payment services, savings, loans? What are your business goals? You also try to identify some of your competitors across different product types that you're offering. So Kuda, Carbon, Piggy, Sparkle, those could be your competitors. How do you intend to make money from transaction fees? God help you. Floats that you earn on deposits or interest on loans. What are your cost elements? Software, you pay AWS or Azure for your database. What channels do you intend to, extend your service through? Mobile, Android or iOS, web, USSD, and what have you. And of course, if you also want to go as far as using agents. I think the slides will be available. So, if you ever find yourself needing to build something, you can just use this to sort of define where you're going with stuff. And yeah, I also put this in some integrations you need to worry about, because you find that, especially when you're starting out in the space and you don't know all the things that you need to do. Sometimes it's when you get there that you now remember that, shoot, we're supposed to do this. So, first off is you need a core banking application that would host everything that you're doing. You need to integrate with NIBS for your bank transfers. If you have a banking license, great. If not, if you're partnering with someone, for your transfers, you can skip NIBS and you're talking to a Flutterwave, talking to a Paystack, talking to an InterSwitch or a Remitter, where they can offer, APIs for interbank transfers. Airtime APIs as well. There are a lot of aggregators that aggregate the APIs for all the different airtime providers. So instead of you doing one integration for Airtel, one for MTN, one for Glo, which, in the short run would stretch your resources, you can identify some, aggregators that you plug into their API and you have access to all these things at once. A lot of guys offer this sort of services. Quick Teller, Prime Airtime, Mobifin, plenty guys do that. Even the likes of eTransact have stuff, iTex, Global Accelerex. Messaging, that for me is a really crucial part. Like, how do you communicate? How do you send OTP? SMS, you are talking to the likes of Banzo, talking to the likes of Temai, Africa Stocking, or even Clickatel or Infobip, depending on the type of investments or the quality of investments that you have, right? For emails, thinking MailChimp, HubSpot, a lot of all those services that would help you to automate how you reach out to your people. Yeah, Clickatel, the 737 guys. So there's bill payments APIs. In some cases, you may be lucky enough to find, airtime and bill payment APIs with the same provider, like QuickTeller would offer you. That's great. If you're in the lending space, you also need to, have alternate data sources. That's where the likes of Okra and Mono come in handy, where you're integrating to APIs to fetch people's bank statements. The likes of Credit Equity, where you're integrating to fetch maybe credit bureau reports and all those things. There is also identity or KYC service provider, where you want to verify IDs on the go. There is Smile ID, there is Verify Me, there is You Verify. All these people via APIs, you can validate government IDs, you can validate BVN. Some even offer, face matching functionalities. Otherwise, you are talking to the likes of, you can talk to Amazon directly. There's this amazing product from Amazon called Recognition, where you can easily build your own face match product. And of course, there's CRM and customer support. How do you take customer stuff? How do you emails, WhatsApp calls, and all that? So you have the likes of Zendesk, you have the likes of Zoho, Freshdesk, etc. So those are things that need to be at the back of your mind when you're now designing the scope of what you're going to be doing. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, on the non-bank guys, this is like the more juicy parts where all the favorites are. So the license types, the permissible activities, active players, and the capital base. So at the beginning of the slide, if you remember, I said there was a new circular from the central bank that came in like 2 weeks ago. I think that was 24th of May, precisely, either 24th or 25th. And the first two guys, the switching and processing guys and the mobile money operators, they now have to keep a capital base of at least 2 billion with the central bank for their licensing to stay active. So switching and processing, what is switching, right? Switching, before this new segregation, switching license used to be the highest possible license that a fintech can have in Nigeria, right? Because what that allows you to do is it allows you to directly connect with all commercial banks, in some cases plus CBN. And by connecting with them directly, you can offer services around interoperability. So for instance, NIBS is the perfect example. NIBS is referred to as the central switch, where everybody is plugged into NIBS. NIB started the NIP scheme, which is, still one of the most cutting edge instant payment services in the world, right? I did a course sometime last year from some South African company like that. And it was interesting to know that, a lot of the things they were teaching about instant money services was things that we were already doing with NIBS for the past God knows how many years. So I felt really proud as a Nigerian knowing that, we had cracked all this. There's card processing, right? Which some of these switch guys do, the likes of InterSwitch, eTransact, UPSL. Transaction clearing as well, NIBS does that, and settlement. And there's also the non-bank acquiring side. Non-bank acquirers mean that you can be the guy processing for payment gateways at the back as a non-bank, and you can also directly go to merchants and say, you know what, maybe big merchants who are worth it for you, where you say, you know what, I want to process for you. So a non-bank acquirer in some cases could be some of the companies that play in the other spaces. So like I said, this is a new segmentation. So some things are still not clear again, because what happens to what happens to people who can already perform some of the functions that are upstairs? So case in point, our darling Paystack Flutterwave, functionally they already do card processing, functionally they're already non-bank acquirers, and the question is, are they switch? No, but are they going to have to drop 2 billion naira? Knowing this country, I think so, but we'll see how that unfolds. So mobile money operators, there are e-money issuers, wallet creation, account management, and they are also able to do everything a super agent does. So example of those are Paga, OPay has that sort of license as well. And there's this guys, Fortis, they don't make noise, they're in Abuja, but they've been around for a very long time, and they're doing quite well. PSS, that's another new one. So the PSS combines the PSSP, PTSP, and super agent. So if you're going directly to get a PSS license, you are dropping 250 million, no story. However, they have now broken down the 3 licenses that make up the PSS and say this is the capital base for each of them. So if you wanted to be a super agent, for instance, you may not have to cough out all that 250, just focus on the one that you have. And there are still a lot of questions around this new regulation around what exactly happens, right? So super agents, does that mean we must upgrade to PSS? Or if I'm a PTSP and a super agent, does that mean I still have to drop the full 250, or I can continue operations? Like a lot of things in the country, right? There is no clarity and there's some level of confusion. For PSSP, the most common activity that you'd find is, rendering payment gateway services. And in the next slide, I'll sort of dive deeper into how some of these things work. So please stay with me. Payment solution development, merchant aggregation and collections. These are things that PSSPs do. PTSP is your payment terminal service provider. They're the ones that deploy POSs that you find either with agents or even at point of sales. So there's POS terminal deployment. They also own some of these terminals. They acquire merchants directly. They can do that, as you can see, which is what is described as merchant service aggregation. Or they can partner with even the banks to deploy POSs for the customers of the bank. But for every POS terminal that you find anywhere in this country, it has to pass through a PTSP. And in addition to that, there's the service called PTAD. PTAD stands for Payment Terminal Application Development. So that means that PTSPs are now solely responsible for developing the applications that run on those POS terminals. So before now, sometime, I think in the past, the licenses were sort of separated, right? So you could be a PTSP and not be a PTAD. But I think it just makes sense right now that the PTAD service is now under PTSP, because it allows for a lot more control. So examples of PTSPs, Global Accelerex, CityServe, iTech, these are like some of the main goons. UPSL falls in this space as well. I think into switch to some of these other OGs at the top. The switching and processing guys can do virtually everything they want to do. And of course, it's only expected given the truckload of money that they have to drop with the central bank. So, next time you're at a point of sale and you want to swipe your card, humor yourself, just try to look to the side or the bottom of the POS and see if you will find the name of any of these guys there. They're like the most common PTSPs you usually find. E-top, correct guy. This family person must be an OG. You have been dropping gems. Thanks. And yeah, there's super agents, right? Super agents are in the business of recruiting agents, managing agents, and some of the other activities in the super agent framework. The reason why I coined it like that is there is a full document that says, the central bank wanting framework for super agents activities, where you now see a long list of everything that super agents are supposed to be doing. If you're interested, please, CBN website is your friend. Some common players here, Capricorn. If you've heard of Baxi Box, that's like their niche customized terminal where their agents just go around with these fancy looking boxes that they used to transact. Teamapt is also in that space now with their Money Point product, and the license requirement is 50 million naira. Okay, we move. So case in point, right? Your payment gateway. So behind every payment gateway that you probably find there is some of the things you have on this screen. So breaking it down, on the card side of things, there are card schemes. Card schemes are the guys that have developed the ecosystem for cards. So if you look at this, you have the MasterCard and Visa, of course, are most common in Nigeria. But aside that, all over the world, you have the likes of JCB, you have Diners Club, you have Discover, you have Union Pay. Union Pay is a Chinko, this thing. Oh my goodness. And I left out American Express. I apologize. There is American Express who have recently entered the Nigerian space. If I'm not mistakenly, I know that they're talking to IntoSwitch in terms of partnering with them. And yeah, I think that you can already collect some Amex cards in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting. Chibuzo. Yeah, it was an oversight. Like I'm seeing it now, like how? Because I remember putting it, maybe it's hidden under these guys. But yeah, and of course, there's our very own, which I intentionally put at the top, our very own Vev, which is like our Tiwa, the local IntoSwitch inspired card scheme. And now on the right-hand side, I tagged their major payment gateways. Major payment gateways because of the Nigerian space. Thanks, Verbon. So Network International, they're not a card scheme. They are what we call TPP. So I didn't put that in the slides because TPP is the full meaning of TPP is third-party processor. And what they do is they just facilitate the payment process. And most times people like NI, they don't play on the gateway side of things. They play more on the issuance side. So if I was issuing a card and I needed a third-party processor to process, instructions coming to me as the issuing bank, that's when I'm talking to an NI. The likes of IntoSwitch, the likes of UPSL, the likes of ACA Payments can also do that in the Nigerian space. But Network International, I think they are headquartered in, is it Egypt or Dubai? I can't remember. But they are very strong in the Middle East. But yeah, they're great guys as well. done a bunch of stuff with some Visa customers in Nigeria. Okay. So yeah, speaking to the major payment gateway side of things, right? The top two guys you see there is CyberSource and there is MasterCard Payment Gateway Service. So CyberSource is a payment processing company that Visa acquired a couple of years ago. And so today, if you were to approach Visa to say, I want to have a direct connection with Visa, what they will be selling to you is CyberSource. So CyberSource is that direct plug type payment gateway that sits in, because it's a Visa solution, they're able to process, Visa cards directly as Visa. However, in that same service, you're able to process MasterCard, you're able to process some of the other card schemes as well that they've now provided as a service. Same applies to MasterCard Payment Gateway Service, popularly known as MPGS. So if you've ever heard anybody in the card space or in the banking space say MPGS, that's MasterCard Payment Gateway Service. Like CyberSource, there's MasterCard's own payment gateway. So processing MasterCard transactions is local to them. And they also extend that across other card schemes. You can process Visa on MPGS as well. In fact, I think they also have integration with the likes of PayPal and some of the non-card type payment companies where you can easily process payment requests. Okay. IPG, interesting. So yeah, WebPay is InterSwitch's own version of that, which is direct. Verve cards talk directly to WebPay when it comes to processing, right? And so the interesting thing is today, as long as you want to process a Verve card in this world, the only way you can do it is through WebPay or IPG as it is now called. So what you would usually have is the likes of Paystack, the likes of Flutterwave, even though at the back, they already have integrations with MPGS and CyberSource. When it comes to Verve cards, they have to route them to InterSwitch. Like that's the only way they'll process it. So that's why sometimes you will find that some payment gateways could even tell you, oh, for now, they're not accepting Verve cards or things like that because, they've probably integrated to some of these major guys who don't have Verve because Verve is local to the Nigerian market. So yeah, and in terms of cost of integration, it's not beans. That's why everybody is not doing it. So for instance, CyberSource, I think apart from Access Bank and Zenith Bank, in fact, those are the only two banks as acquirers that can process CyberSource settlement files, right? Apart from those two, I think System Specs is probably the only, System Specs, I think Paystack and PayU are some of the local guys who have successfully completed the CyberSource integration. Chibuzo, wow. Interesting. Yeah, so but that also means that on the acquirer side of things, either one of these guys can only work with Access or Zenith Bank as the acquirer bank. For MPGS, the OGs on MPGS, you have GT Bank, you have Zenith Bank as well. So fun fact is the likes of Flutterwave, Paystack, in the earlier days of their lives so MPGS offers different licensing types, right? Where you could have an associate license, you can have a reseller license. So some of the banks have reseller licenses where they can profile customers under themselves, but those customers will still end up consuming the actual APIs from the payment gateway. So when you have that sort of relationship as well, it means you're using MPGS, but you are using somebody else's registration, if I can put it that way. I know we did something like that when I was at Carbon. Interesting project, but if I can advise anybody, if you don't have money, don't try it. Don't try it. That's all I'll say. So yeah, we can Swift and Co. use it. ISPs. For which one now? I MPGS or cyber stuff. Okay, let me move on. Oh, okay. The direct integration to MasterCard. Yes, a bunch of people have that. A bunch of people. So I know, like I was saying about Paystack and Flutterwave, they started out with that indirect connection, but over time, because the volumes went up, they were doing really well. They were able to sort of make a case for direct connections. Okay. So again, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in here, but I'm also wary of, information overload, and I will just keep it at that. So yeah, enough about, some of the core things. I would then jump into, some of the core capabilities that I would think of for a product manager, especially in the fintech space. One is that, I expect you to have business sense, right? So business sense in the sense that, I don't know if that counts as rhymes. So business sense in the sense that you need to be able to think of your product in a way that you're asking tough questions around whether or not this makes business sense for your company. So some things could make product sense, but not necessarily make business sense. And I'll give you an example. 2019, the advent of free transfers or low value transfers. Verbon is on the call. We used to be a Carbon then. So we started this thing where we started doing bank transfers for 10 naira back when banks were still doing it for 15 naira. At the same time, we said anybody that wants to top up their Carbon wallets can do it for free. And even though it was free to everybody, we were paying Paystack, 0 point something percent for every time you were topping up. We were not charging you, but somebody was paying for it. And, the person was the company. Initially, it made sense because, we didn't have those many customers and they restricted it to on a use case basis. But what you found was our friends, our mobile money agent friends, they came to greet us. They saw that our transfer was cheap and top up was free, and they helped us to use it very well. Like our numbers grew astronomically. Initially, we were happy that we were doing something right until we started to check the data and we saw that, we had been compromised by an interesting customer segment, right? And at some point, we had to make the decision of turning off that free top up and, putting the actual fee to it. In the beginning, yeah, it led to a lot of drop off. But in terms of the commensurate value of the drop off to the amount of revenue we were able to retain, like it was an awesome decision that, well, I don't regret. I don't think we regretted it either. Soft skills, you have to be the guy that knows how to manage everybody, manage your engineers, manage your head of customer service. I know my head of customer service then, man, they fear that baby. If she comes like this and said your product has cost wahala, my people are responding to 100 mails per day and things like that. So again, the expectation is you're able to effectively manage people around you because you're cross-functional, heavily cross-functional. Technical skills, this one, I put it there. Again, I'm one of the PMs that cannot write one line of code to save my life. But as you may have picked up, I have a very clear understanding of how these things work on the function side of things. So even though I have that deficit on not being able to write code, because I know that's a burning question for a lot of people who want to enter the product management space. Oh, I'm not technical, I can't write code, I can't do this. It's fine. I would expect that over time you build your muscles. So these days, I am engaging with developers, and unlike before, where from the first conversation you know that I've never written code before. Now, the way I interact with you, Steph, you probably think that "Oga, yeah, come and write it now. Let's do this thing on time." So I wouldn't say, make it a pre-requirement, but it's a capability that I expect that you'll be able to pick up and things like that. Of course, there's a place of market orientation, know what everybody is doing, like be very involved in the markets, be aware. Imagine your CEO is sending you a WhatsApp message saying that, could I just launch this feature? It's not when he's sending you that message that you are now saying, oh, let me check what they've done. As he's sending you the message, you're already giving it to him. Oh, yes, the feature, and they tried, but they could have done this, they could have done that. You are already on top of what is happening, and it helps you to come across as you know what you are doing. And trust me, there is nothing that is more comforting for your employer when he knows that you're the guy that is on top of stuff and constantly knows what they're doing. Customer experience and empathy, you have to be heavily on the customer side of things. Take it personal when your customers have issues. Take it personal when maybe BVN validation service has been down for the past 2 hours. If you need to go and change it for somebody, change it for the person. I remember when I was at Carbon, there was one time, I can't remember what happened. Like I left the office and went to Nibs. I went to sit down with them in Nibs. I'm like, if people don't solve our problem like this, we are closing together here, we'll forget. And yes, I was there until I called the office and they were like, oh yes, it's fine now, it's been solved. I was in their waiting room and I was ready to I was ready to change it for anybody's fine. Or InterSwitch too. InterSwitch can be very annoying. You have customer issues, you send them mail, they'll be giving you old email. I remember when I had to blind copy, was it Akim or Mitchell that I blind copied in one email to InterSwitch? People that have been sending mail for the past 1 week, no response. The day I did that blind copy, somebody called me that what is the problem? I say, okay, I would have done this one since. But again, for me, it was more from I'm not a troublesome person naturally, but if my customers are suffering, like what am I now doing here? So as a PM in the fintech space, because most times your product deals with money, right? And you would never really be able to quantify the effect of that extra 1 second, that extra 5 minutes that your customer did not get their money. So let me paint a scenario. Imagine somebody is in the hospital, his wife wants to give birth, and the doctors have said they have to operate now. And they say, oh, yeah, send money. And it's that day that your service is down. The person has sent money, the hospital can confirm it. It's as simple as a 30 minutes delay in completing that transaction could result in a life and death situation, right? Because money is that important. So in the fintech space where you're dealing with people's money, you're dealing with their livelihood, you're probably dealing with, their source of that next chunk of bread or their daily bread. It is important that, at every point in time, you're putting yourself in the customer's shoes, trying to understand, and, that informs how quickly you are to help them resolve their issues. All right. So characteristics of a product manager. I think you have to have a lot of grit and determination. You have to have passion and energy. You have to be a constant and quick learner. So I put in something there where I say, raw intelligence is definitely an advantage, but nothing beats curiosity and that insatiable thirst for knowledge. To be a generalist, essentially. Be an empathetic listener. This one, people say it a lot, but it is until they have to listen before you find out that listening is the characteristics that they write, not one that they show. I'm sometimes guilty of that as well, right? So how often do you plan a response in your head rather than listen? This one, the first time I came across it, it was like me catching myself real time. Like a lot of the times you're listening, and the moment you start listening, you're already like, I know what the issue is. You're already thinking of the response or the clap back in your head, as opposed to, completing that listening exercise. listen to understand, not to respond. As a PM, you have to be calm under pressure. Like there will always be pressure. I remember back in today, like I'll tell you that my name is Nifemi Oluboyede. I can work under pressure, with or without supervision. I know a bunch of people had that on their CV back then, but yeah, the discipline of product management is where you get to practicalize that. Pressure can be, the system has gone bonkers and you have to manage everybody to sort of steady the ship. And you can't be the one fidgeting as well, because a lot of the times folks are looking up to you for answers or solutions. Strategic and analytical thinking, you need to think out the box a lot of times. Trust me, that's where a lot of fancy, amazing products come from. Integrity, right? Leaders by influence, be trustworthy and inspire integrity. Your team members need to know that if you say something, that's how they'll meet it, right? So otherwise, it taints the integrity of a lot of the things that you get to do over time. Confidence, of course, you have to be confident. See the way I've been boboing you people on this course since morning now. Like I said, I think I'm doing a good job of sounding like I know what I'm saying. And from some of the comments from the likes of Femi and Chibuzo, it's coming across like I'm swerving you people very well. Like this deception is working. Gone. I see the comments. You see, I'm confidently, boboing you guys. And thanks for the validation. If I didn't know it was working, I'm now sure that it's working. And yeah, effective communicator. Of course, you have to be able to simplify complexities. And I intentionally used those two words, right? Because as much as I'm saying effective communicator, I don't think that using the two words simplifying complexities makes it look like an effective communicator, right? Because that is some level of that is some level of complication in what is supposed to be simple. But I hope you get the message. You have to be decisive as well. I know that my days are carbon. I used to be accused of this a lot, where I'm always waiting for approval. I've finished writing everything. I've pushed it to the CEO then, and I'm like, let's do this, let's do that. But I'm always like, should we do this? Not let's do that, right? And over time, I've come to know that a lot of times people are hiring you to, take those decisive decisions. It's okay to be wrong sometimes, but you should be in a place where you're able to effectively take the amount of information you have and make an informed decision out of that information. Most times, if you're able to back your decision based on the amount of information at your disposal, even when you're wrong, you can get away with it. To say, this is what I had to work with. But the last thing you want is that you didn't do anything because, you were indecisive. And yeah, I have some unpopular opinion on the right-hand side. Grit thrives over passion, right? Because passion is possible. It could win off. You could lose it at some point, right? But if you are a gritty person, you are the get it done, we must finish it type person. So even when the passion is not there the way it should be there, you still keep pushing. What is grit? Google is your friend, though. We die here, exactly. Humility. It is okay not to know. Like I say that, I try to say that as much as possible. Nobody expects that because you are a PM, you should be all-knowing. It's okay not to know. But the good thing is, for every time you're faced with not knowing, it should fuel your curiosity. Let that be the last time you didn't know that very thing. When somebody asks you, oh, what is this? And your answer is, I don't know. It's okay for it to be, I don't know, that one time. But as you are finishing that conversation, you are filling that gap to make sure that for that same question, I don't know is never the same answer that you have to give. So yeah. Oh yeah, and there's this fancy one. I don't know if you people need this one, but it's there, Sha. Right? The lean product life cycle. I find that this works a lot, especially because most of the fintechs that we have in Nigeria are growing or startup-like. this makes a whole lot of sense. Where first off, there's an idea, capture your idea, align them into a strategy. If you remember the strategy-like looking document that I put together in the beginning, explore, like investigating the problems and possible opportunities that exist. When you've done that, you then validate, you create a small product that you try to achieve product market fit with. The moment you hit that fit, that's when you start to grow. Reason being that I expect that in the process of validation, right, if you find that what you are looking to validate does not work, you can easily go back to the drawing board to get things started all over again. But once you've hit validation, that is when you can then start to grow, accelerating your business, maximizing market penetration. That's when you come and put billboard on Lekki toll gate for the world to know that you have arrived. Or that's when you go and sponsor Big Brother. I'd not call anybody's name. That's when you sponsor Big Brother, and once you've reached that growth stage, you can then start planning to sustain what you've built, create market dominance, maximize profit. I think, a lot of the big fintechs that we're very aware of in the market are in that, what's it called? They're between that growth and sustenance phase where they're like, entering new markets, expanding our offering, and then we want to be the number one guy, kill or be killed, see a flutter wave, they're now unicorn. When these guys raised recently, Bankly, Flutterwave was one of those that invested in Bankly. And if you just look back how many years ago, in fact, up until their recent, Flutterwave is the guy that people were investing in, right? The likes of Visa, the likes of their early investors. But hey, the story has changed. They're now investing in smaller companies as well. And that's how the play is. Look at the Stripe, right? Stripe had their own set of investors, and they've become somebody that is acquiring, an entire company in another market. So that's where that sustainability comes in, where you are looking to not only maximize profits, but you're achieving market dominance. And retire is where you sort of recycle residual value, you free up capital for innovation. So people like Visa, MasterCard, they've been there, done that. Money spending, plenty. Visa came and pumped 200 million in InterSwitch. At that level, any new product that they want to do now is just pet projects, but they can bankroll it. All right. So on the scaling side of things, this may not be as meaty or as fancy as you guys would want it to be. So I took a snapshot from the Wheeler Fintech and Scale team report from March 2021, where they sort of looked at scaling fintechs in Africa. So what they did was to collect data on 4 specific metrics from over 700 fintech companies across Africa. And, the metrics that they were measuring for the purpose of this in terms of scale is, number of users, annual revenue, the cumulative fundraising that they have, and number of employees. And this brings me to the point where, it resonated with me, right? Because today in Nigeria, or in fact, in a lot of countries, when you want to know when they are close to raising or they just finished raising, just go to their LinkedIn page. You'll see that either they've started hiring or they are looking to hire actively. Like Flutterwave now, when this last one came, we knew because some people were joining. That was when they were doing some high-level Galacticos type acquisition, as in some mad hiring, because that they use that to sort of finalize. There are some investors that's what you use to finish their conversation, like, okay, bring 20 million. See, this guy is now with us. This guy is now with us, and things like that. So Neymar type signing, share you get. So that happens a lot. And usually that happens when you're trying to raise to scale. When you're like, okay, you want to enter new markets, you are hiring a country manager in a country that you've not even started operations and things like that. Same thing, they're looking at your revenues. So when they're pushing you that we need to do this, we need to do that, is because the revenues also play a role in the valuation when it's time to raise. So a lot of these things are interconnected. Number of users sometimes translates into the revenue translates into the fundraising feeds into employee size and strength. So they sort of split companies into analysis groups according to their business model, B2B, B2C, and then they ranked companies within their analysis groups for each of these 4 scales. So sadly, I have a very small image that is not very clear, but you can just Google, or there's a link in there. So maybe once you get the slides, you can feel free to check and zoom in. Some of your faves are on that list on the far right. So if you look at the scaled firms, in this case, so scaling is more around, expansion. Where have they been? How much have they done? How much have they raised? What's their employee size? How much money are they sitting on? So if you look at this, sorry, I'm not sure I can expand that much, but the top guys you see there, you probably see an MTN Mobile Money. MTN Mobile Money is in a lot of African countries. M-Pesa is quite huge as well. On that list, you see Baobab Group. Opay is on that list as well. From what I hear, Opay is now in a number of African countries. Paga is there as well. InterSwitch is there. Tala is there. Flutterwave is there. Branch is there. Branch is in 3 African countries plus India, making 4. Let me see. Migo is there. Migo is in Nigeria, then Brazil. Carbon is somewhere in the yellow parts. So Carbon is in Nigeria, then in Kenya. They had done a pilot in Ghana before. I think they're back to Ghana now and ready. Paystack is also somewhere there. But, for the longest time, Paystack was predominantly in Nigeria, and they are now aggressively, entering new markets. I know they've entered Ghana, I think South Africa as well. So yeah, a bunch of some of your Fowry Pay. Fowry. Oh yeah, Fowry is number 4 on that list, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, they're number 4 after MTN. So yeah, about 700 fintech companies were looked at. From this research, less than 10% of these companies have been able to scale. So yeah, scaling is a fancy word. Again, just to put it out there, scaling in the context of, going beyond your local markets, right? Because we are talking about scaling in Africa. So scaling beyond going is about leaving your market and entering new markets, penetrating new markets. Nigeria and South Africa topped that list. And so the next part is, having worked in, at least 2 companies where I was, in the company when new markets were entered, right? I'm sharing some of the insights that I picked up, right? Scaling takes you back to economics class. By the way, I'm an economics major, so forgive. So I think of it as a function of demand and supply. Scaling is solving the problem of excess, either excess demand or excess supply. So if you are in the place where there is excess demand, what you're doing is you're creating extra capacity to be able to cater for that demand. And with that, if you successfully do that, you would achieve scale. Where there's the case of excess supply, which is on your path, you're either looking to acquire more customers, or you're stimulating the customers in a way that their demand grows by itself. So if a customer was consuming 5 units of your product, how can you get that same customer to be consuming 20 units, right? Hypothetically speaking. So imagine say a DSTV, for instance. If DSTV had 100,000 customers on their, I can't remember the name of those plans again, on their 3K plan, whatever it is called, what do you think the revenue would be if they were able to convert 50% of those guys all the way to premium, right? So at the end of the day, it's still the same DSTV, it's still the same number of customers. Their customer base wouldn't grow, but by stimulating the existing customers to consume more of what they're supplying, that's a huge bump for them, right? So some tips that I've shared off, first off, are you ready, right? In terms of manpower and the infrastructure required. Also, you have to do your research on the new markets, check for viability, check for similarities. So a lot of the times, if you find a lot of the fintechs in Nigeria, their first point of call, the top two places that they want to scale to is Ghana or Kenya. Why? Because a lot of people assume that or believe that there are similarities in the market. And so you wouldn't have to do a lot of tweaking on the product side of things to enter those markets. But guess what? During my time at Fairmoney, I had a different outlook at that, right? And it is when you enter that market as an external player, how many incumbents do you have? Because by looking at the incumbents, yes, it may be a similar product. Yes, you may even have the better offering. However, how many times or how long would it usually take for you to alter user behavior in a way that they would leave, a service that they are accustomed to for an external coming service that they know nothing about? And so that's where your research comes in, where you're talking to people actively in that market, trying to understand what is applicable, their default behaviors. So even in the more local setting, right, I remember trying to extend services from the Southwest to the North at some point. And it was important to note that some basic behavioral differences existed. So for instance, one simple thing that we did at Fairmoney is if your GPS location or your IP suggests that you are in the North, when you are at the loan application stage, you would never see interest as a copy or as text. So even if we are charging you 10% interest, we would never display interest for anybody that their location pings off to be in the North. Rather, we use a different terminology based off of some of the feedback from that market. Interest is not something that it's not a friendly terminology in some religions, right? And so we could call it fee, we could call it charge, but not interest. I remember also, some years, maybe like 2 years ago, actually, when I went for a friend's wedding in Jos, and I brought out my OPay app when OPay was still doing, oh my God, like, everything. And it was interesting to know that I launched OPay in Jos, and the menus that I was seeing, I had never seen it before in Lagos. That's when I first saw O-Trike. I saw some O's that were peculiar to that market, right? So it's important to do your research in a way that your product offering can easily be tailored to whatever you have there. Which, goes to the next point. It doesn't come cheap. It will cost you money. So the last thing on your mind is trying to optimize for money when you're expanding into new markets. There's a lot of learning experiences. There's a lot of unknowns. And more often than not, some of these unknowns, the sad reality is that your pockets, you pay school fees like you learn with money. last but not the least on here is the concept of scale is not an exact science. So you may get it wrong. You may get the timing wrong. You may get the market wrong. Again, at Fair Money, I remember we entered a new market last year in one of the South American countries. We did it for a couple of months, and at some point the hard decision had to be made. Like, the market was not ready for what we had to offer. It was a sad reality. We had invested not so much because we were running a pilot, but yeah, some people were working. We had a country manager that had to leave as well because we got to a point where we were like, these people are not ready. And, maybe coupled with COVID. So it was a balance of timing as well, not really the market. But those are sad realities that you also need to have at the back of your mind when you're scaling. For instance, I mentioned carbon piloting in Ghana. That pilot happened before I even joined Carbon in 2019. And I think it's only this year that Carbon is finally going back to Ghana after piloting in 2018. So, it's interesting. I know Paystack as well. Some years back, they had also piloted in Ghana, and it took a while before they came back to resume operations. So yeah, it happens. It happens. All right. So I will just leave you with some hacks that I've picked up in the space. First thing, user research is now a discipline. Like, before now, everybody expects the PM to do everything. You are the one that will do user research. You are the one that will do survey. You are the one that will come and write user story on PRD. You are the one that will still be Scrum Master, that will manage engineers. You are the one that will work with QA and actually be a QA yourself. You are like omnipresent. You will be the product marketing person that is working with Google Analytics and, pushing out ads and everything. But it is important to know that user research is now a discipline, and it's okay you can decide to specialize in that as well, right? Or you can recognize the fact that it's a discipline and outsource that element of your work to people who actually, do that. Work like there's a target on your back. There might be one, right? So never get too comfortable. If comfort should be discomforting, if I can put it that way. It's a fast-paced environment, so you have to keep, moving. A lot of elements in this country are moving mad, so you don't want to be caught unawares. Like, before it happens, be on top of it. Leverage relationships. This one, that's why I put it in the middle. Like, for me, that's one of my biggest currencies, right? Huge relationships. Like, in the space, so if I don't know you, if I need something from you and I don't know you, I don't think I will not know somebody that knows you, right? And that's important for you as a PM. You would not know everything. You would not be able to solve all your problems, but you should have a huge network that you can always leverage off of to make things happen. Like, there's hardly anything you want to do in the fintech space, even things that I know that I'm not conversant with or I'm not skilled at. I know somebody that will know somebody that one phone call like this, it's like, oh yeah, la, and voila, you will see everything that you've been looking for. Ship fast. The competition didn't steal your idea, you were slow. Like, this happens a lot. A lot of times we are overthinking things. We are being over specific on features. You want it to be mad gone. And because you want it to be mad gone, the design process that you could have pushed out with in 1 week, you've been doing back and forth with designer because you want your UI and your UX to be gang. Whereas you can finish in 1 week, push it out, and then work with your designer to do an improved version that you can update later. The important thing is at every point in time, make it very functional. That way you can go to market with functional and come back with more functional or more aesthetically sound. So yeah, This last one I also like a lot. You are not the user. Make data-backed decisions. There is something that I usually say, right? Like, no matter how similar you are to the user, no matter how closely related you are, no matter how, when you are describing your user, is your name that is coming out at the end of every description sentence, you are not your user. And what that means, or what that translates into, is, for me, you know too much about the product for you to still be the user. So a lot of the times, even though you are similar to the user, you have similar, similar characteristics. The fact that you are the PM, there is some information asymmetry. So the way a default user that did not have the level of information you have would have reacted to the product, it's not the same way you would react to it. So it's as simple as you are even measuring, maybe you send out prototypes to your users and you are measuring their interaction with the prototypes. If you know where send money is and it should have taken you 2 seconds to press send money, your default user may take 5 seconds. So when you're measuring for discoverability, for instance, you can't use your own discoverability as the basis to say, oh, we've made this banking screen. It's easy to discover this call to action that we're putting in there. And yes, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Although it sounds more like TEDx Ikorodu, but yeah, we can work with that. So at this point, any questions?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nifemi. Let's thank Nifemi in the chat box while we prepare our questions. Yes,
So I
thank you
think
so
for
much.
the questions, we can, if you want to write it down, awesome. If you want to, ask it direct, like, okay,
Raise your hand.
just raise your hand.
Okay, we have one question. I have a question from someone on YouTube myself, so I'm dropping it.
Oh, okay, cool stuff. Uchenna, how can one ship fast when your dev team frustrates you at some point? They usually do. Nice one. I actually like that question. So I would also draw back to my time at Carbon, right? Where there were 3 PMs, but 1 engineering team. And so when I had a feature that I want to push, I'm competing with my other PMs in terms of which one takes precedent. And what initially, I think I was going about that battle the wrong way. Like, we'll fight it out at PM level. No, my own is first. No, your own is second. So imagine we had 5 features in the backlog. You now find that your own feature is maybe number 4. PM1, his own is 1 and 3. PM2, his own is 2. Your own is 4. And what that means is, it means for maybe 3 cycles of sprints and stuff, you probably don't get to be working on anything actively. You are just crunching data and waiting for the next feature that you would whip up, right? What I then found was leveraging relationship with your engineers and with all stakeholders generally is one way to go about it. Option 2 is, could you dumb down your feature in a way that it requires the least engineering work possible? Because one of the things that I found at that time was, I was then able to, when I'm preparing feature in my head, there's the normal one, there is now the version that the least engineering work possible. So how can we do this in a way that an engineer can spend 2 hours on it? It won't affect our sprints. The person that is waiting for his own work at the end of 2 weeks will not be affected by whatever it is we're doing. But yeah, that worked in some cases. In some cases, it can't work, sadly. I'll give another example. When we're going to launch Carbon USSD, something similar happened. It was about the same time we were launching Kenya and iOS. So the engineers were swamped. I had to pally some of the guys. I remember Tomachi in particular, we agreed that, you know what, for the next 1 week, after work, once you close 5, maybe by 5, you have finished your sprint work. After 5, we'll stay back and you work on this thing. And we did that. After 1 week, when he finished, we needed to involve his reports because we couldn't deploy. I was like, Oga, how far? we've done this thing at your back, but we are finished. We need to deploy. I was like, okay. Again, I went to Pali, the head of QA. I was like, so we have done this thing. We want to deploy. Please help us do it. And everybody was doing this outside of normal work hours, evenings, nights. Sometimes we're in the office till 9, 10 p.m. just trying to get this done. And eventually we were done. By the time we were doing release and they said USSD is out, the CTO came, he took the glory, his guys did it. I'm like, well, all the best, man. My product is out and everybody is fine. So yeah, it's not like there's an exact answer to that, but more importantly, you need to establish a relationship with your dev team in a way that it's never us versus you. It's more, how can we do this together? Because guess what? The developers probably get more kick out of a successful product than you would. Because in their next interview, they will list out you will say that you develop one product, but when the developer is listing out his achievements to his next employer, he will break down that product into different services and tell you, oh, he deployed this, he deployed that, he single-handedly wrote the code for this, blah, blah, blah. So guess what? There's more in it for them than you. Help them to see that, and yeah, that should work. But if it doesn't work, all the best though.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think we have a question here from Jean Man. It came in alongside the thank you note. He was asking, what is a fintech license?
Fintech license. So right now there is no definite fintech license from what I know. Right? The licenses that exist are the ones that I had spoke about. John Mann, I'm going back so that you would see. So what you have here are the licenses that most of the fintech companies in Nigeria have, right? So whatever the exact service that you're rendering in the financial services space, it will most likely be within this space in some variant. So for instance, if you think of it, right, even your crypto guys, if they were to get a license, they would probably be, they could probably be mobile money operators, just that is mobile digital currency that, they're dealing with. So yeah, John Mann, I hope that answers your question. I can see Chibuzo, what is the most practical way for a QA person of 8 years experience to cross over to PM? That one is easy. You just cross. It's like a Papa will Choke Express. Just enter the roads and cross. But look left, look right, and look left again before you cross. But I think for QA folks, it should be easier because you have the advantage of being the guy that sees what's happening at the end, right? Before it is ticked off. So more often than not, I'd like to think of QAs as the custodian of, what's it called? As the custodian of the acceptance criteria, right? Which is a huge part of whatever is being designed. So if you're a QA person, I just think it's important for you to talk to, some of the PMs. You're probably halfway into it already. And it's just, if your interest is piqued, do some read up, attend conversations like this, attend purely product-driven conversations as well, and you should be fine. You should be fine. Damilola Adika. So for someone who has no foundation at all in tech, but wants to start as soon as possible, what is the best place to start from and how? So this one is hard though, I can't lie. But I do think that the very first thing is, as much as you want to do this, you also have to be very clear on what it is you want to get into. I think, so for anybody that you're even talking to, I would usually recommend that it's explicitly clear what the discipline of product management entails, so that you are sure from the beginning that that is what you want to do. I think Chibuzo is raising his hand, so once I'm done, maybe we can unmute and speak. So for Dami, I would say, talk to the guys at Treford as well. They do a lot of, classes, boot camp around that. There are some other product schools around. There's Product Dive. There's Google as well, where you can Google stuff. For instance, you could go to YouTube, look for some product related content. There's Mind the Product. There's a lot of stuff, open source stuff, right, that you can start with. And when you have like a base knowledge, you can then start to ingrain yourself in more practical sessions like this one. Richard O, your contacts. What is your take on GSI initiative? How does it work? And have you ever used it for repayment services? Nice one. I like this question. So, Victoria, no, I have not used it. I think it's an amazing initiative. I'm praying that it works. Although I also think that it's a very basic or simple service that our people have just decided to make a circus of, right? Because in theory, what the GSI is I'm taking a loan and I'm saying that when it's time to pay back, you can take my money from any of my banks, not just the one bank. It shouldn't be rocket science, in my honest opinion. But I do think that, we are making it look like something really great and grand and special. Yeah, I think it's every lender's dream. Sadly, the first rollout was limited to commercial banks. So we non-bank lenders at the time were not able to test it out. So I have never used it, but in theory, functionally, I think it's really amazing, because you find that some people just like to owe money in this country. In fact, not even in this country alone, some people just like to owe money. They have the money, but they don't want to give you, like, do your worst. And I think that generally our credit system in Nigeria, until there is defined consequences for bad credits, we may still continue to have people like that. But with GSI, awesome. But I'm also worried that, people may start to use alternative solutions like digital wallets and stuff to hide their funds. So hopefully, there is enough synergy across the space to prevent that. So that if you are checking my Zenith Bank for my money, it's not that I've gone to put the money inside wallet.africa, or I've gone to put the money inside Carbon, and the GSI is not hitting Carbon. Sure you get. With DMU, no prob, custodians of product, totally agree. And there is, okay, Q, John Man, do you think it is a good idea to transfer payment processing fee to customers? My brother, let me tell you the truth. I'm assuming John Man is a man. It's a brilliant idea. Like, it's a brilliant idea. But again, the question is, who is the customer? On a case-by-case basis, though, on a serious note now, I think it's more of on a case-by-case basis. There are times when it's expedient to pass the costs to customers, and there are times when it's inconsequential. And I'll give you an example. Imagine on a digital banking or mobile wallet app, right, that has, what's it called? That provides airtime as a service. And I designed the product in a way that you can buy airtime from your cards, not just from the balance you have in the wallet, right? At the back of the services, more often than not, at the aggregator level, you earn commissions on those airtime. So every time you buy airtime, the person is probably earning a commission of 3%, 4%, 5%. So if Paystack was charging you 1% and you're earning 3% on that, transaction, it's okay to not pass the cost because you can take out 1% from your 3% and you're still earning. So I think that on a case-by-case basis, you need to balance off the response of your customers to price change and how that affects your bottom line. I hope that answers your question. Moyolua says, are there any specific regulators for core banking companies in Nigeria? Not really. However, there are expectations in terms of what is admissible. So you probably may not be able to just bring in any solution. There will probably be need to to work with a NIBS, for instance, because by the time you are doing NIBS integration, is your solution compatible with whatever the expectations are on the NIBS side? So as of now, I don't think there is any specific regulation, but the expectation would be that will probably come from either a central bank or a NIBS level. Do we have a fintech solution to NIBS now? I'm not sure I understand the question, Mr. Ario. What do you mean by, do you want, explain verbally?
Maybe Mr. Ario would like to explain verbally. I will ask him to unmute now.
Yeah, good evening, Nifemi. Thanks for the presentation. So, some time ago, all these, I think around the 90s or thereabouts, all these banks come together and form NIBS. So I was thinking maybe this time around the fintech players too can come together and form something like NIBS that will serve as a direct competitor NIBS.
Oh, okay.
Because
now I get.
The past few to be terrible. So I'm thinking maybe that will be a core fintech solution that will be a direct competition to NIBS. I hope that is clear enough.
Oh yeah, I get you. So I would say that it's an interesting standpoint, but one that you also have to be careful if you want to go that route, because for every fintech that you have seen on this list, right, at the base of everything, there is a very high level of synergy that happens with commercial banks. And so if you come out and say you are the alternative to NIBS, where would the money sit down? It's still going to sit in the bank. And like you rightly said, who owns NIBS? The commercial banks. So it's remotely possible that your efforts could easily be upended, if I could see that way. In theory, a bunch of some of the guys on this list have tried to create alternatives to NIBS. IntoSwitch has an interbank platform that they use on QuickTeller. QuickTeller will never send money through the NIP. They have their own that they use. They sell it to customers as well, but NIBS still takes precedence because there's a way they refer to it in the banks. It's Tiwantiwa, it's our own. Every month, NIBS sends reports to the MDs of the banks showing the performance of the banks by rank. So woe betide you are the head of digital banking or e-business or whatever in the bank, and your numbers dropped, last month because there's a new kid on the block that is the alternative to NIBS and you moved the transactions there. Because end of year, when there's profit sharing, the owners too will share the money. So yeah. Yeah, thanks for that, Kolade. I know the guys at PA HQ are doing something close to that. I think it's interesting. And it's also interesting to see how that pans out. Personally, I do think I would like to have a clear understanding of how they want to make this work, especially because it's switching money. So context, let me give you guys a quick overview of what it would look like to replace in NIBS in terms of functionally creating an instant payment alternative. Again, this is something that we did at Remita, right? First off is you need the players that would play in that scheme. So you're creating a scheme, call it whatever, Fintech instant payment scheme, FIPS. You've created the scheme. You then need to start approaching players one after the other to say, we have this scheme, this is what we want to do, these are the advantages, these are, the requirements from you and all of that. And once that is done, the next step will then be two things. Step one is getting everybody to collateralize the value of their transfers. So for every dime that you intend to send out, it has to be backed by collateral, because functionally for instant payments to happen, even though you're getting value instantly, the funds are not settled instantly. There is an end of day that happens when the net position across all the players in the scheme is settled. So for that instant to happen, it's just a messaging type thing that happens where bank, so let's say Carbon and Kuda are on this platform. If I'm sending money from Carbon to Kuda, what happens is my Carbon account is debited. Carbon sends a message to Kuda and says, Kuda, I've collected money from Nifemi, pay Chibuzo. Immediately, Kuda has what it would call either a suspense or a settlement account on this scheme. They debit that account and credit Chibuzo. Now, at the end of the day, Carbon will sum up all the requests from Carbon to Kuda. Kuda will also do the same thing, and then they net out the position. So if Carbon sent 100 million to Kuda and Kuda sent 80 million to Carbon, one person settles 20 million naira difference to the other person at the end of the day, and everybody is fine. But for everybody to have confidence enough in doing that real-time settlement and waiting for end of day, that's where the collateral comes in. So you put in a collateral and you are never going to be able to send money that exceeds the value of that collateral. So if you are doing 100 million in transfers per day, there must be an instrument worth that much to back your transaction, so that if you close shop overnight, people can liquidate the collateral and get their money, and others don't join you to close shop. So these are some of the things that are put in place on the banking side of things that any fintech that wants to do the same thing also needs to put into cognizance. Securing the value for all the players, because that's where the confidence comes in the system. And at the end of the day, financial payment systems are built on trust. I hope that answered the question. So Johnny Mann said, if a company like Carbon wants to issue physical cards to its users like Kuda is doing with Zenith, I'm not sure what the question is, but yeah, Carbon can definitely do that. If you are issuing cards, right? So there are different options. You can have an issuing license with the card scheme with either Verve, MasterCard, or Visa. With your issuing license, you can directly issue cards. Yeah, there are a bunch of things that you still have to tidy up in the back end. Alternatively, you can also, again, because they have an MFB license, you definitely have to work with an actual commercial bank, irrespective of which of the card schemes. And then there is also the option of what we call a BIN sponsorship arrangement, where a Zenith Bank, for instance, can decide to assign you to sponsor a BIN for you, where the cards will still be Zenith Bank cards, but Zenith Bank cards sponsored, Carbon cards sponsored by Zenith. So as far as MasterCard is concerned, as far as Visa is concerned, it's a Zenith Bank card. But as far as the customer is concerned, it's a Carbon card. There's a lot of, handshake that goes into that. There's also a bin ranging system where, similar to the sponsorship, Zenith Bank can decide that, from card number, this to this, we are setting it aside for these people. There's co-branding where you can have a Zenith and Carbon on the face of the card, where it's like a partnership. The specifics of the different options are different, but yeah, Carbon can definitely do that. Chibuzo, sorry, I see you're raising up your hand. Let me just be sure that there's no question before, it comes to, okay, I've seen the rest of Johnny Man's question. As a product manager, what steps will you take to achieve? Johnny Man, let's talk after the service. This one is long thing. But again, if you're talking specifically to Carbon, I think that, I actually worked on that specifically before I left Carbon, so I may be able to, speak to that. Okay, and I might added something to what I was describing, where, you would need CBN's backing because settlement is done by RTGS. Completely agree, but again, we're in an age of, I don't want to call it age of rebels, right? But if everybody has been using RTGS this whole time, who says we cannot create an alternative to RTGS? For instance, platforms like Ripple is trying to rip out Swift. As we know, it's where they've sort of cut short the international money transfer times from what we've been used to over time with Swift, and shorten that time. So who knows, somebody may come up with an amazing technology that will give RTGS a run for its money. Sorry. So yeah, Chibuzo, you wanted to add something. You can unmute and quickly do that. Thanks a lot. Like, you've been super helpful the whole time. Chibuzo? Chibuzo, you're raising your hand though. Okay, let me ask to unmute. Let me see.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Nifemi. I've been giving you some props. Like you just said, Ripple, rip out. So to me, now you're a rapper now officially. So yes, I wanted to add to this conversation about the peer. And I think, first of all, I want to thank you for the props you give to NIP. A lot of people don't really know what's happening in the industry, and due to some reasons where people or business or partners to NIP easily blame NIBS for issues. I'm ex-NIBS and I know how it works. I know what's happening. I know what's happening on the ground. And NIP is heads and shoulders far and above, very far than, I've not seen the instant payments that is close to NIP like that. Some companies, some instant payment schemes don't have name inquiry, don't have quite a lot of things that NIP has, but that's not what I want to talk about. In addition to collateralization, which you have mentioned, and you mentioning collateralization just gives me that how do I put it now, that confidence or that confirmation that you really, really, really know what's up. Yes, we are in the age of rebels, but there are some things that need to be shifted. First of all, the regulation says that only DMBs, deposit money banks, only DMBs, commercial banks, can do certain things. So if you are coming with the peer.co and you are trying to do transactions between fintech, that in a way it can be a different what's it called now? A different thing from what NIBS is and what NIP is. For example, when there were issues with when they were blocking PiggyVest and all this guy Abeg and all that, they came on board to Barter. Right now, you can send money from your Barter to Abeg, Cowrywise, and PiggyVest, I think. You get. So yes, there can be an interplay between fintechs, of which the balances will be holding balances in your app or in the wallet. but then the real money will still be in the bank. That to me is not replacing NIPS. You get, that's one by the
More of
that's
optimizing, right?
it's more of optimizing. You get, it's not like you are replacing, but there's still this bad blood, there's still this, talk about NIPS and all that. And people are saying
Disruption.
yeah, disruption and all that. So the regulation first has to be shaken, it has to be changed. That's number one. Collateralization. I remember when I was in NIPS and we had an issue with I think it's Promasidor, and money lost. Like, let me use Nigerian terms, money just lost in millions. But NIPS was not shaking because that money is collateralized. Or is it on Mcash where people were doing scams on Mcash on a daily basis? They were doing scams on Mcash, but NIPS was paying back. We're refunding the scam. Like, somebody will scam you, NIPS will still give you the money back. So that's the level of deep collateralization. In case something goes wrong, NIPS has that cover. Why? Because NIPS is owned by the banks and NIPS is supported by the banks. You understand? So, and like you said, there's something also you said, trust. That trust is very important. Finance is people's money. The most important thing is trust. And the banks trust NIPS. They trust NIPS, that NIPS is like an independent body that can settle balances between the different banks. NIPS is not partisan to a GTB, or NIPS is not partisan, so they have that trust, just like INEC, you understand? And then the last point is that NIPS is the only institution in the country, company, entity, whatever you call it, that can send an instruction to the CBN to affect the balance of a bank. So NIPS can say...
There's one other player that does that, but go on.
Yes, there's another player that does that, but I get. There's another player that does that, but NIPS is still... you get what I'm saying? You get, so that's...
They have senior rights.
Yeah, so when you bring all these things together, it will be difficult to say. So it's rather just say, let us change things from the foundation, let us optimize, or let us equal these things that NIPS has as a standing, and then replace them. Those are the three things that can happen. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot for the contribution. I knew that from your comments, I knew that you were an OG, and you have summed it up real nice. So jumping quickly to let's wrap up the questions. Something from YouTube says, please, can you further explain capital base? So simply put, capital base is almost like the collateral that we just spoke about, right? You are keeping a percentage of money with the central bank that is refundable money, but it's money that you are keeping for just in case, such that if anything ever goes wrong, CBN can call on that money, and the people that use your service would not be in trouble. Ibitola says, I thought it's the switching companies that does the debit and credit and reconciliation, not the bank itself. So usually, right, the switching companies, it depends exactly on what you're describing. So using NIPS as an example, right? In theory, NIPS is just the guy that brings everybody together. From what I described, who debits your account? Your bank. Who credits the other person? That person's bank, right? So the actual services that happen are initiated by the respective banks. What NIPS is just responsible for is, facilitating the exchange of messages or interactions between both parties. So for instance, the bank that sends X amount to Bank Y is keeping a record. You know that he sent X amount. Bank Y also knows that Bank X sent him X amount. So when everybody is doing settlements, reconciliation is pretty much this versus this. Everything here has to jive with everything here. So if I'm the one sending, if I say I sent 50 million, you that you received, you cannot tell me that you only received 48. Where did 2 million go? Money cannot disappear, especially when it's message money, right? There would always be a trail. Mr. Rio, is the card transaction account not collateral enough? Not sure I understand this. But guys, please feel free to reach out to me on maybe LinkedIn or Twitter. Oh, well, Twitter is banned. Sorry, don't reach out to me on Twitter. I don't use Twitter. Like, we're not from Nigeria anyways. But reach out to me on LinkedIn, for some of these follow-up questions. I'm happy to respond. Zenith Bank, use access, sorry, Ripple, rip out. Okay, this one, yeah, some of us don't even know. Okay, say corruption. Please, okay, I think I've explained capital base for something. All right. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other question or legit it's finally time to say thanks for coming to this amazing TED Talk.
Yeah, I think it will be time to say it's a big thank you for coming to this amazing TED Talk. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. You guys have been wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
I don't want to call it students. You have been wonderful TEDx audience. And yeah, I'm happy we did this. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nifemi. Please, let's go ahead and thank Nifemi once again. It's been an awesome talk with him. So much to learn. I learned a whole lot. I hope you learned as much as well. So do let us know in the chats if it's something you like to have, like a series 2, episode 2, episode 3, 4, 5, a whole season, if you even want. Let's know in the chat and let's know in the comments. Yes. Yes. Okay. I can see a few comments coming in as regards that. But yes. So thank you so much, everyone. I know we took a little bit more time than expected, but yes,